What's up, Star Wars fans? Welcome back to the TK423 podcast. What we have cooking up today is a continuation of our Star Wars film ranking list with rank number 7. Now, before we get into rank number 7, we're going to do a little bit of a recap. At rank number 11, in last place, we had Rise of Skywalker. At rank number 10, we had The Last Jedi. And rank number 9 got thrown out the window because we had a tie at rank number 8 with Solo: A Star Wars Story and Attack of the Clones. So, without further ado, let's get into rank number 7.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
So, rank number 7 is, ironically, the 7th film in the Skywalker saga, The Force Awakens. Now, when I first saw this film in 2015, it was one of the best theatrical experiences in my life. I was excited, everyone around me was excited, and I was around all these Star Wars fans, and it was just such a beautiful experience, right? And just to get this out of the way, I am not judging The Force Awakens based off of what came after it, right? Because I'm not judging the trilogy as a whole. I'm just judging The Force Awakens as if it were a standalone film, and I have not seen Last Jedi: Rise of Skywalker, right? That's how we're critiquing this because I feel like that's how it should be critiqued. Now, when you discuss The Last Jedi, you have to talk about what came before that because it's directly connected and it's in the same trilogy, right? So, and that was one of the big problems with The Last Jedi. It was a horrible continuation of The Force Awakens, and then Rise of Skywalker was a horrible continuation of The Last Jedi. So, it was just a rolling snowball down a mountain that you couldn't miss, you couldn't dodge. And that's what happened with the sequel trilogy. But we're just talking about The Force Awakens because it was the start of the trilogy and you didn't know what came after it. Okay? The only thing that came before that was Return of the Jedi. So, let's get into this. The movie starts out with Kylo Ren looking for Luke Skywalker. And I thought that first scene was a really good, dark, sinister scene where you're introduced to this character, Kylo Ren. And you're thinking, man, this could be the next Darth Vader. This, he's got the looks of it, right? He's his grandson. But the thing that I like most about this scene is Finn being acknowledged by Kylo Ren, right? A lot of people think that it was because he didn't fire his blaster, and Kylo Ren's like, what are you doing? You were told by Captain Phasma to fire on those villagers, and you didn't do it. And then you have other people, like myself, who think that Kylo looked at Finn and was like, you are Force sensitive. I sensed something in you. And the spotlight began to be put on Finn. The one from the village, FN2187. So it's like he immediately made that connection, and I feel like he connected with Finn through the Force, and Finn didn't really even know what to think because it was just probably something inside of him, right? At the time. Now, granted, when you look ahead of it, which I'm not going to do, but if you look ahead of it, nothing ever came out of it. Finn never became a Jedi. So it was probably the first one based off of the entire trilogy as a whole. The first, reason why Kylo looked at him. But I thought the scene as a whole was awesome. I thought it was a great opening scene. And then you get introduced to Rey, and you see her on Jakku, and where she meets BB-8 and the Talama Parqua. Yeah, I went and saw this movie in theaters like 12 times, so I loved it. So I quote from it from time to time, but one of the biggest things about this film that really stood out was the fact that Rey connected with the Skywalker lightsaber. And at the time, everyone thought, oh, wow, that means she's Luke's daughter. And I was on board with that. A lot of people were saying, oh, that would be so cliche. That would be such the norm, following suit. Oh, it's Luke's daughter. And I was thinking to myself, no, that'd be cool. And at the end of the day, it would have made more sense, right? As to how she Jedi mind tricked Daniel Craig's stormtrooper and how she reflected Kylo Ren's mind interrogation powers and how she was able to use a lightsaber at the end so proficiently. And because that's what you thought during when you were watching this movie, like, oh, this chick has been trained as a Jedi before. I mean, it was almost a slam dunk that she was trained as a Jedi at one time. Now, granted, that ended up not being true. That, you know, she was never trained as a Jedi before that. But I was giving it the benefit of the doubt because I didn't know what came next, right? I didn't know what was going to happen in episode 8. I didn't know what was going to happen in episode 9. So at that time, I thought it was cool. Now, as to how she could fly the Millennium Falcon, it still was never explained, and it wasn't really explained in the movie itself. But that, you know, that those are small things that, you know, you can really only, you know, majorly critique if you're critiquing the trilogy as a whole, because those things developed in all the different avenues, all the different turns. It just was a complete mess. But what The Force Awakens did was set the ground for a really good trilogy, right? Because I'll tell you what I took away from The Force Awakens, not knowing what happened in episode 8 and episode 9, right? I thought that Rey had somehow had her memory wiped or altered. You know, you see things like that happen in other Star Wars, you know, content like Knights of the Republic, with how Darth Revan became a Jedi again after getting captured and knocked in the head and getting his memory wiped. And, you know, so there was some thoughts about that in my head that, oh, well, maybe, like I said, she had trained as a Jedi in the past and then her memory got wiped or got altered and she forgot how, you know, she got disconnected from the Force, right? And that would have made sense, right? But then on top of that, having Finn become a Jedi, that was clearly evident in the film, because you see Finn 90% of the film after he escapes the First Order, he's using the lightsaber and not Rey. So a lot of people were thinking, well, obviously Rey's going to become a Jedi, right? She's the main character. She's got the most attention. Excuse me. And she was bound to become a Jedi. But based off The Force Awakens, I felt like Finn should have also became a Jedi, because, and granted, like I said, he held the lightsaber for most of the film, and then he got clapped by Kylo Ren, a wounded Kylo Ren at that. I mean, Kylo Ren had no issues with him, and he got sliced up the back, and that looked gruesome. I thought for a split second Finn died, but I was like, nah, they're not going to do that. They can't pull a Game of Thrones. And then Rey beats Kylo Ren. And now what's funny is that I had seen in a recent, or I don't know if it was recent, it could have been recent or it could have been years ago, but that Mark Hamill, when he was reading the script and he was thinking like, oh, when, you know, the lightsaber's moving in the snow, it's like you're going to see what happened on Hoth in episode 5 with Mark Hamill, you know, grabbing the lightsaber, and then in The Force Awakens, you would see it, you know, shaking, and then instead of Rey catching it, it's Luke catching his lightsaber and fighting Kylo Ren and saving Rey and Finn from Kylo Ren and showing Kylo Ren who's boss, who his old master was. And then from that point on, Luke trained Finn and Rey in the way of the Jedi. And I thought that would have been really cool. That's kind of, based off what I saw, I was expecting Rey and Finn to become a Jedi. And it never happened. But again, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about The Force Awakens. But like I said, the film as a whole was fantastic. I enjoyed it. And the good parts, a couple of the other good parts too was when General Hux was giving his speech. And that was, it gives me goosebumps even to this day when I watch it. And, I enjoyed seeing Han and Chewbacca back. Now, granted, with Han's death, I didn't really agree with the way he died. I expected him to die. I didn't expect it in that fashion, but they did that to aid Kylo Ren's character progression. There are two flip sides to it, but at the end of the day, Han was going to die, and I guess if you're going to die, it's going to be by your son's hands, by a lightsaber through the belly. But the part I like about that scene, the thing that I like about that scene is how in the background you see Kylo Ren and you see the lights behind him. You see a red light and then you see a blue light. And it's like you see the conflict and you see how he's crying and he's very emotional. And then when those shutters close behind where Rey and Finn are and Chewbacca, and then it all turns red. And it's like, oh, what's about to happen. Han's about to get smacked, clapped, whacked. And it's so sad and it's emotional. And it was groundbreaking. You see Han Solo die. He got stabbed by a lightsaber, and you never would have thought Han Solo would die via getting stabbed by a lightsaber. But it happened in the hands of his own son. And I thought that on top of the Hux speech, and I do like, the final duel and how they filmed it, and there wasn't a ton of green screen like how you saw in the prequels. So I appreciate the traditional filming of this movie the more and more I watch it, right? And I thought the film as a whole is deserving of rank number 7 on this list. And it's one of those Star Wars movies I can still go back and watch over and over again as long as I continue to make myself forget what happens next. But The Force Awakens was a good movie. And it introduced us to characters that had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, those characters didn't really come full swing except for Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren was the best out of the four. And I can't believe I forgot about Poe Dameron. But Poe Dameron wasn't as big in this film as he was in The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Granted, he helped destroy Starkiller Base. But which brings me to my next point. I'm not going to edit out the fact that I forgot to talk about this. I'm just going to go with it. But the critique that people have about this show, I would say is probably the biggest main critique that I completely forgot about in thinking about this, is that everyone was saying that it's exactly like A New Hope. I disagree. And I'll tell you why. A New Hope, you had Luke. Force Awakens, you have Rey. Off the bat, that's a difference. Number 2, Rey never used the lightsaber all the way up until the end. Luke, you see, train with the training droid, but he didn't use the lightsaber at the end, right? So off the bat, there's 2 differences right there. The main character of the original trilogy, Luke, was solely responsible for the inept destruction of the first Death Star, right? And Rey really didn't have a lot to do with the destruction of Starkiller Base. Really, if anything, it was all in Poe's hands and the Resistance. So there's another difference. Now, yes, some of the similarities of having a base like the Death Star, but it being a planet instead of a space station. But I think that's fine. I think it's fine. And, again, with the people that want to say, oh, it's exactly like A New Hope, it's really not once you get down to the nitpicking and once you get down to the fact that, Han Solo didn't train Rey in the ways of the Force like the way Obi-Wan did to Luke. And, like I said, the lightsaber usage wasn't the same by the main character. And I think there are more differences than there are similarities. And so, now, obviously, A New Hope is a better film than The Force Awakens. But at the end of the day, I felt like I did have to address that, and I don't know how I forgot it initially. But it has been addressed, and that does it for rank number 7, The Force Awakens. I hope you enjoyed this. If you agree, disagree, leave your opinion in the comments section below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And as always, may the Force be with you.